The snow was falling in soft, lazy flakes, coating the park bench where Victoria Sterling sat during her lunch break. At 35, she was the youngest CEO in her company's history, having taken the helm of Sterling Media Group 3 years ago after her father's retirement. She wore an elegant cream-colored coat, perfectly tailored, with a camel-colored scarf wrapped around her neck. Her blonde hair was styled in soft waves, her makeup flawless despite the cold. She was checking her phone, responding to the endless stream of emails that never seemed to stop, when she heard a small voice. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Victoria looked up to find a little girl standing in front of her, maybe 4 or 5 years old. She had light blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail and wore a brown hooded coat that looked slightly too large. In her small hand, she clutched a worn teddy bear. "Yes?" Victoria said, softening her tone automatically. Something about the child's solemn expression touched her. "Are you sad?" the little girl asked. Victoria blinked, taken aback. "What makes you think I'm sad? You look like my daddy does sometimes, when he thinks I'm not watching, like you're carrying something heavy." The little girl tilted her head. "Are you lonely?" Victoria felt something catch in her throat. How had this child seen through her so easily? "Sometimes," she admitted. "Are you here with your parents?" "Just my daddy. He's over there." The girl pointed to a man on a nearby bench talking on his phone. He looked stressed, running his free hand through his dark hair. "He's always on the phone for work. He says it's important." "I understand that," Victoria said quietly. She understood it all too well. "My name is Sophie," the little girl said. She held up her teddy bear. "This is Mr. Bear. What's your name?" "Victoria." Sophie studied her with serious eyes. Then, in a small voice that nearly broke Victoria's heart, she said, "I don't have a mama. She's in heaven. Daddy says she's watching over me, but sometimes I really wish I could see her, talk to her, have someone to do girl things with, you know?" Victoria's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. That must be very hard. Daddy tries. He really does. But he's always working, and he doesn't know how to do braids. And sometimes I just want—" Sophie trailed off, then looked up at Victoria with hopeful eyes. "Ma'am, can I spend a day with you? Just one day? You could be my mama for a day. We could do girl things. I promise I'll be good." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Sophie, please?" Sophie's voice was so small, so hopeful. "Just one day. Daddy's always busy, and I don't have anyone to do mama things with. We could get ice cream or look at pretty things, or you could teach me stuff that mamas teach their little girls. Please?" Victoria looked at this small child, at the loneliness in her eyes that mirrored Victoria's own, and felt something shift in her chest. She glanced over at the man on the bench, still absorbed in his phone call, clearly stressed and overwhelmed. "Let me talk to your daddy first, okay? We need to make sure he says it's all right." Sophie's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, you'll ask him?" "I'll ask him." Sophie grabbed Victoria's hand and pulled her toward the man on the bench. As they got closer, Victoria could hear his side of the conversation. "I understand the deadline, but I'm a single parent. I can't work 16-hour days anymore. There has to be some flexibility. Yes, I know the project is important. I'm doing my best." He looked up as they approached and quickly ended the call. Up close, Victoria could see he was probably in his late 30s, with kind but tired eyes. He wore jeans and a dark jacket, and looked like he hadn't slept well in days. "Sophie, honey, I told you not to bother people." His voice was gentle but worn. "I didn't bother her. Daddy, I asked her something important." Sophie looked up at Victoria encouragingly. Victoria extended her hand. "I'm Victoria Sterling. Your daughter just made a very sweet request, and I wanted to discuss it with you properly." The man shook her hand, his expression cautious. "I'm James Wilson. What kind of request?" She asked if she could spend a day with me. "To do girl things and have someone to be her mama for a day." Victoria's voice was soft. "She told me her mother passed away." James's face crumbled slightly. "Sophie, honey, you can't just ask strangers." "But she's not a stranger anymore. Daddy, her name is Victoria, and she's really nice, and she looks lonely like us, and maybe we could all be less lonely together." Sophie's words tumbled out in a rush. James looked between his daughter and Victoria, clearly torn between protecting his child and recognizing her need. "Miss Sterling, I appreciate your kindness, but we couldn't possibly impose—" "You're not imposing," Sophie asked. "And honestly—" Victoria paused, surprised by her own honesty. "I think I need this as much as she does." Something in Victoria's voice must have convinced James because his expression softened. "Can we sit down and talk about this properly?" They sat on the bench together, Sophie between them, while Victoria explained. She told them she was CEO of a media company, that she'd never married, never had children, had poured everything into her career, that she'd woken up that morning, her 35th birthday, and realized she was completely alone. No family, no close friends, just work and more work. "I came to this park to think," Victoria said quietly, "to figure out if this is really the life I want." And then Sophie appeared and saw right through me. "She's a very perceptive little girl." "She is," James agreed, looking at his daughter with such love it made Victoria's chest ache. Her mother was the same way. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. Since then, it's been just us. I'm trying to be both parents, but I'm failing at it. I'm a software engineer, and my company keeps demanding more hours, and Sophie needs attention I can't always give her. She needs female influence, someone to teach her things I don't know how to teach. "What if," Victoria said slowly, "we made this a regular thing? Not just one day, but maybe one day a week. I could take Sophie for the day, do activities with her, give you some time to work or rest. And it would give me—" She looked at Sophie, who was watching her with hopeful eyes. "It would give me something I didn't know I was missing." James studied her carefully. "Miss Sterling, Victoria, please." "Victoria, why would you do this? You don't know us." "Because your daughter asked me if I was lonely, and I realized I am. I've spent 15 years building a career and forgot to build a life. And because she looks at me like maybe I could be something important to someone. Do you know how rare that is?" James was quiet for a long moment. "Can I think about it? Maybe we could exchange information. You could provide references. We could do this safely and properly." "Of course." "That's smart." Victoria pulled out a business card. "My work number. And I'll write my personal cell on the back. Call me if you decide this is something you're comfortable with. No pressure." That night, James called. They talked for over an hour. He asked careful questions about her background, her intentions, her life. She answered honestly. By the end of the conversation, they'd agreed to try it. One Saturday a month to start. See how it went. The first Saturday, Victoria picked Sophie up at 9 in the morning. She'd barely slept the night before, nervous and excited in equal measure. She'd planned an entire day. Breakfast at a cafe, then the children's museum, then lunch, then maybe some shopping. Sophie appeared at the door in her brown coat, clutching Mr. Bear, her face glowing with excitement. "You came." "Of course I came. I promised, didn't I?" They spent the day doing all the things Victoria had planned, and several things she hadn't. Sophie wanted to look at everything, touch everything, ask questions about everything. She held Victoria's hand as they walked, chattered about her dreams and fears and favorite things. At lunch, Sophie said, "Victoria, can I tell you something? Always. My mama used to take me for hot chocolate before she got sick. I miss that." Victoria felt tears sting her eyes. "Would you like to get hot chocolate after lunch?" "Yes, please." They sat in the cafe drinking hot chocolate with whipped cream, and Sophie told Victoria about her mother, about how she used to sing lullabies and make funny pancakes and always knew when Sophie needed a hug. "I'm not trying to replace her," Victoria said gently. "Your mama sounds like she was wonderful." She was. "But Daddy says it's okay to love other people too, that Mama would want me to have people who care about me." "Do you care about me, Victoria?" "Yes," Victoria said, realizing it was true. "I do." One Saturday a month became 2. Then every weekend. Victoria found herself rearranging her schedule, delegating more at work, leaving the office earlier. Things she'd never done before. Things that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. She taught Sophie how to braid hair. They baked cookies together. They went to the zoo and the aquarium and art museums. Victoria bought Sophie books and clothes and toys, then stopped herself, worried she was overstepping. But James assured her it was fine. "You're giving her something I can't," James said one evening when he picked Sophie up. "You're giving her female attention and guidance. Honestly, you're giving me something too. Time to breathe. Time to be a better parent because I'm not so overwhelmed." "She's giving me more than I'm giving her," Victoria admitted. "I was so lonely, James. I didn't realize how lonely until Sophie asked to spend a day with me." 6 months into their arrangement, Sophie asked Victoria to come to her kindergarten's mothers and daughters tea party. "I know you're not my real mama," Sophie said carefully, "but you're the closest thing I have. Would you come, please?" Victoria attended the tea party, sitting with Sophie at a small table, drinking pretend tea from tiny cups. She met Sophie's teacher, who assumed Victoria was Sophie's mother and didn't correct the assumption. She watched Sophie introduce her to friends with such pride. "This is Victoria. She's my special person." After the tea party, as they walked to the car, Sophie slipped her hand into Victoria's. "Thank you for coming. I was the only kid who didn't know if they'd have someone there, but you came. I'll always come when you need me, sweetheart. Always." That night, James invited Victoria to stay for dinner. It had become a regular thing, her staying after she brought Sophie home. They'd eat together, talk about their weeks, about Sophie, about life. "Can I ask you something?" James said after Sophie went Todd. "Of course. When Sophie first asked you to spend a day with her, why did you really say yes?" "The truth." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Because I'd spent my entire birthday alone. Because I realized I'd built this impressive career, but I had no one to share it with. Because I was sitting on a bench wondering if this was all there was to life. And then this little girl appeared and saw right through all my armor and asked me if I was lonely. And I couldn't lie to her." Victoria's voice grew soft. "She saved me, James. As much as I like to think I'm helping her, she saved me from a life of accomplishment without meaning." James reached across the table and took her hand. "You've saved us too, both of us. Sophie is happier than she's been since her mother died. And he paused. "I'm falling in love with you, Victoria. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But watching you with my daughter, seeing how you care for her, getting to know you these past months, I'm in love with you." Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I love you too. Both of you. This family you've let me be part of. I love it more than anything I've ever built or achieved." They were married a year later. Sophie was the flower girl, carrying Mr. Bear and a bouquet of flowers, beaming with pride. At the reception, she gave a speech that made everyone cry. "I asked Victoria to be my mama for one day," Sophie said seriously, and she said yes. And then she stayed. "Every day, she's not my first mama, but she's my forever mama, and I'm really happy." 3 years later, Victoria sat on the same park bench where she'd first met Sophie. She was pushing a stroller now, with her and James's 6-month-old son sleeping peacefully inside. Sophie, now 8, sat beside her reading a book. "What are you thinking about?" Sophie asked, looking up. "About the day we met. About how you asked me if I was lonely." "Were you?" "Very. I didn't realize how much until you asked." "Are you still lonely?" Victoria looked at her stepdaughter, then at the baby in the stroller, then thought about James waiting at home. "No, sweetheart. I'm not lonely anymore, thanks to you." "I'm not lonely either." Sophie leaned against Victoria's shoulder. "You know what?" "What?" "I think sometimes angels come as little girls with teddy bears, and sometimes they come as sad ladies on park benches, and sometimes they find each other exactly when they're supposed to." Victoria kissed the top of Sophie's head. "I think you're exactly right." Later, Victoria would think about how one question from a child had changed her entire life. "How can I spend a day with you?" had turned into forever. How the loneliest moment of her life had been the beginning of the greatest gift she'd ever received. She'd been sitting on that bench, successful and accomplished and completely empty, wondering if this was all there was. And a little girl with a teddy bear had appeared and offered her something more precious than any achievement or accolade. A place to belong. a family, love. Victoria had spent years building an empire, but Sophie had taught her that the most important thing you can build is connection, family, home. The career was still there. Victoria still ran her company, still made important decisions, still achieved impressive things. But now it was balanced with soccer games and bedtime stories and family dinners, with a stepdaughter who'd chosen her and a husband who loved her and a son who'd completed their family. All because a little girl had seen through her armor and asked a simple question. "Can I spend a day with you?" One day had become forever. And Victoria Sterling, who'd spent her life building success, had finally learned what it meant to build something that truly mattered. A family, a home, a life filled not with achievements, but with love. All because she'd said yes to a lonely little girl in a park. And that little girl had saved her right back.